Hel-
The last lesson.
Hello, students. Today I am going to discuss with you the last lesson. Although the lesson already is being discussed with you earlier, and the question answers related to this chapter are also discussed with you, still for revision, I am just going to discuss it with you with the help of the extra marks. Okay, let's start the lesson and learn. I hope that your knowledge will be improved and you can do better and more understanding will be generated. So, students, let's start the lesson again.
Learning objectives. By the end of this module, the students will be able to read a story on the importance of our mother tongue in our lives, understand, interpret, and evaluate the setting, plot, and the characters of the story. Learn why we must make best use of time and not delay appropriate actions. Appreciate the message of the story, particularly patriotism and the love for one's mother tongue. Concepts in module. Introduction. About the author. Summary and analysis. Character sketch. Message. Language is an instrument used to communicate with others. Each language is unique and reflects the culture, habits, and the individual identity of a country. Language is the basis for self-awareness and intellectual development. A child uses this language to express his thoughts and feelings. Our mother tongue is therefore an essential instrument for our emotional development. It plays a tremendously useful role in the education of a child, as it facilitates learning. About the author. Alphonse Daudet was a French novelist and a short story writer. Born in Nimes, France, he wrote his first novel at the mere age of 14. He is also popularly known as Charles Dickens of France. Take a look at the summary and analysis. The story revolves around the time when Prussian forces won control over France in 1870. The French districts of Alsace and Lorraine were now ruled by Prussia. The Prussians banned the teaching of French in schools of these two districts, and the French teachers were forced to leave. The story narrates one such situation wherein the French teacher, Mr. M. Hamel, has been asked by the invaders from Berlin to discontinue the teaching of French language. It depicts the last day of Mr. M. Hamel at his school. He delivers the last French lesson to his students with utmost sincerity and dedication that day. The story also tells us the experience of a boy named Franz, who was one of the students. Franz was fun-loving and was more interested in watching birds rather than learning French, which terrified him. He also dreaded the iron rod of M. Hamel. Reaching the school premises, he was surprised to see the sudden change in the atmosphere. There was no usual noise of lessons being chanted by students. It seemed as quiet as a Sunday morning. All students were already seated in their places, M. Hamel was walking with his iron ruler under his arm. Franz was too frightened to enter the class as he thought that he would be scolded badly as he was very late. But to his surprise, M. Hamel did not say anything to him. He rather welcomed Franz politely. "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." Down, Franz noticed that teacher was wearing his beautiful green coat, frilled shirt with a little black silk cap having embroidery on it. He usually wore such a dress on functions or prize ceremonies only. Also noticed that the other villagers, including old Hauser, former mayor, and former postmaster, were also there in the classroom. They were seated on the benches at the back of the class. M. Hamel announced that the school had been served with a notice served from their rulers in Berlin. It stated that French would not be taught in schools of Alsace and Lorraine anymore. Instead, German would be taught in the schools of these two French cities. He requested the students to be more attentive for their last French lesson. Franz now realized what was there on the notice board in the town hall. When Frank came to know that it was his last lesson in French, he realized the importance of French language. Mr. Hamel taught them that the French language was the most beautiful, clearest, and the most logical language of the world. People should stick with their language because it will prove to be the key to their prison in case they are enslaved. Something magical happened that day in the class. The students understood everything very well because they were more attentive, and Mr. Hamel was more patient and polite that day. Finally, with a heavy heart, Mr. Hamel stood up. He walked to the blackboard very sadly. He took a piece of chalk and wrote on it, "Vive la France," which means "Long live France," and declared the class was dismissed. The story captures the emotions of those people who have suddenly lost the right to preserve one of the most significant parts of their culture, their mother tongue. Let's take a look at the character sketches. Franz was a student in a school in Alsace, and M. Hamel was his French teacher. Instead of going to school, he preferred to enjoy the beauty of the nature, the bright sun, and chirping of the birds. He was always in fear of his teacher's terrible ruler. He realized the importance of French language and a French teacher when the orders came from Berlin banning the teaching of French in schools and replacing it by German. Franz had never bothered to complete the work set by M. Hamel and thus was unable to learn any French at all. As a result, French frightened him. His teacher's great iron rod frightened him even more. But now that he knew he would not be able to learn any French, he was filled with remorse. His newfound love for his mother tongue made him respect his teacher immensely. He was able to understand the lesson that day, as Mr. Hamel taught very patiently and politely. He regretted not having paid proper attention to his French lessons earlier.
The student, the meaning of the remorse is?
Remorse.
Remorse means a deep regret or guilt for doing something wrong. You can say, in other words, repentance, penitence, guilt, feeling of guilt, bad conscience. तो दैट मीन्स कि पछतावा होना, ठीक है ना, बिकॉज दैट पर्सन एक्चुअली कुड नॉट लर्न द लैंग्वेज, फ्रेंच लैंग्वेज, दैट्स वाई ही इज जस्ट रिपेंटिंग, है ना. रिमोर्स, फिल्ड विद रिमोर्स मीन्स कि फिल्ड विद रिपेंटेंस.
Mr. M. Hamill. M. Hamill was a teacher of strict discipline. He is portrayed as a typical schoolmaster who always kept his terrible ruler by his side. Students were afraid of his cranky nature and iron ruler. He was a true patriot and a sincere teacher who served the school for 40 years with dedication.
Okay, student, the meaning of the cranky is?
Cranky.
Cranky means students easily annoyed or upset. Okay, you can say, in other words, bad tempered, irritable, grumpy, grouchy, peevish.
Though he was a strict taskmaster, he was respected by his students and the villagers both. He was shattered when he received an order from Berlin to vacate his place to make room for a new German teacher. He remained upset during his last class. The notice changed his behavior. In his last class, he was rather very polite and patient. Hans was not able to recite his lesson correctly. Instead of scolding him, he just made him understand the importance and relevance of learning one's mother tongue. He deeply loved and respected France and considered French as the most beautiful language in the world. While delivering the last lesson, he asked his students to cherish the beauty of their language forever, and that important things should never be postponed as time flies very fast. Take a look at the message of the story. Through the story, The Last Lesson, Alphonse Daudet brings to light the intense love and pride people feel for their own language and culture. It also brings forth the fact that a victorious country asserts its power on the vanquished country by imposing many restrictions.
So, student, the meaning of the vanquished means?
Vanquish.
Vanquish means ki defeat thoroughly. You can say, in other words, be victorious over, overcome या overwhelm या conquer, defeat, किसी को हरा देना, जीत का हासिल कर लेना, कामयाबी हासिल करना. Be victorious over.
Story also highlights the human tendency to defer learning something under the complacent assumption that there shall always be enough time to learn later. The writer aims at making the readers understand the value of time, freedom, and peace.
The meaning of the complacent means?
Complacent.
Complacent means showing smug or uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one's achievements. Or in synonyms is self-satisfied, pleased with oneself, proud of oneself, self-approving. Students, these are some words which are difficult. So therefore, the meaning of these words will be told to you.
In great dread of.
In great dread of means ki to be continuously afraid of someone or something.
Count on.
Count on. The meaning of the count on is rely on, depend on, या trust in, have confidence.
Thumbed at the edges.
That means ki of a book, magazine, etc. having been read often and bearing marks of frequent handling.
Solemn.
Solemn. Solemn means formal and dignified, serious. In other words, we can say dignified, ceremonious, ceremonial, stately, courtly, majestic. So student, with this, I conclude this video. Thank you very much for watching and listening. If you have any kind of problem related to this chapter or any other chapter, so you can contact me through WhatsApp and through telephonic call. So thank you very much for watching and listening. Have a good day.